Welcome to PixelTunes Radio,
a podcast where we have fun
talking about video games
and video game music.
I'm Bat Mike.
And I'm Edward Nigma, otherwise known as the Riddler.
And you're listening to episode 109, Batman, Batman. We are doing an episode exclusively on Batman-related video games and their video game music.
Yeah, mostly classic Batman.
Yeah.
I think we go up to mostly sprite-based stuff. Early PlayStation, I think, is about where we end.
Yeah.
You know, we know there's a lot of modern Batman games out there, but I don't think we're familiar enough with those to really put them on the show. But we're sticking with a lot of stuff that you guys might not know about. Just like we do every episode. Stuff you might not know about, stuff you might be very familiar with.
Yes.
All excellent music. I was extremely surprised at how much cool music there was from Batman games that I did not even know existed until we started doing research for this show. So you guys are in for a good treat and probably a lot of new information as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great Batman games and Batman game music. I think the franchises remain mostly consistent. I mean, there's been some clunkers, definitely. Stuff like Batman Dark Tomorrow. But overall, there's been some really good Batman games, and we're going to dive into them in a little bit. But
and some bad games with good music.
Yeah, that's very true.
So we'll talk about those as well.
Absolutely. So we wanted to announce a couple things at the beginning of this show. First off, if you want to check out Retro World Expo, it is here in our home state of Connecticut, and you can check it out for September 8th through the 9th. It's a weekend show, and you can check it out at retroworldexpo.com for more information and check out tickets. We don't sponsor the show in the sense that they don't pay us or anything like that.
No, but we're going to be there.
Right.
Whether we have a panel or not, we're going to be there. We would love to hang out with you guys.
Right.
It's in Hartford, Connecticut. Last year, it was in October, and Keyglyph from the VGM Jukebox came down. Robin Purnell from Rhythm and Pixels came down. They both had a blast, and they both expressed a lot of interest in coming back to hang out with us.
So we might try to do something again.
So, you know, if you guys are from out of state, hopefully we're letting you guys know early enough that you can make some plans to come down and join us. We would love to have you. Even, like I said, if it's not for a panel, we might even do another
like a
round
meet and
robin
greet or something,
or a live podcast at somebody's house or whatever. And whoever wants to join in, we'd be more than happy to have you. So,
absolutely.
Retro World Expo, September 8th and 9th in Hartford, Connecticut. Keep it on your calendar. And we'll keep you guys updated on the Facebook group and on the podcast as ticket information becomes available for it.
And check out their page as well on Facebook. I believe they have either a group or a page that they make announcements at. And I believe you can comment on stuff to let people know that if you did come out and you liked what you saw last time around, you can make more suggestions for those PixelTunes Radio guys to come back.
Request a PixelTunes panel.
Yes.
That will probably help us get one for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
All
so,
right.
And then we have one other announcement. What's that, Ed?
I'm pregnant.
I knew it. Is it mine?
It's a bat.
It's a bat?
Yeah, I got a little too into the Batman research.
Yes.
No, the real announcement is this is our last Pixel Chat segment of PixelTunes podcast.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we're not doing Pixel Chat anymore. What we've decided to do, since it seems to take so long to get to the music, and we know you guys really want to get to the kind of meat of the show, is that we're going to move Pixel Chat to a video segment on YouTube, on Mike's channel.
YouTube.com/dongled. So if you go there, you'll be able to check out the Pixel Chat segments. We're going to release them most likely the day before the episode is going to come out.
Yeah.
So like the day before the last Wednesday, so the last Tuesday of the month.
Right, and so you'll be able to, see us on video. We'll probably add some visual aids to maybe explain more what we're talking about if we bring up different topics. So I think it's going to be a much better format for our question and answer than just audio. Yeah,
I agree. And what's nice about it is it also allows us the opportunity to include more of you in this segment. So instead of just asking a question, you can now send in a video to us. If you post a video on YouTube, send us a private link at pixeltunesradio@gmail.com. You could also send us an audio clip if you want your voice to be heard, and we'll play that over it. Or you could just send us a regular question, pixeltunesradio@gmail.com. Send us your questions.
So speaking of Pixel Chat, let's get into our Pixel Chat
Our
segment.
last one.
Last audio Pixel Chat.
Yes. All right, so our first question comes to us from Dan Bisciglia, and he asks, favorite shoot-'em-up soundtrack of all time, no console/era restrictions.
Favorite shmup soundtrack of all time.
Ooh. What do you say?
Pensive pauses from both of us, because there's so many good...
Yeah. I'm going to say that honestly, I love this soundtrack. Battlemania Daiginjo, also known as Troubleshooter 2.
That does not surprise me coming from you.
I cannot praise that game and its soundtrack enough. Just like one of the nittiest, grittiest, toughest, roughest Genesis soundtracks I've ever heard. So I'm going to say that because I love every single song off of it. So
awesome.
Great game, great soundtrack.
Jeez, man. All right, so this is a combination of an excellent soundtrack and lots of nostalgia. Takushi Hayamuta's Super R-Type soundtrack on the Super Nintendo.
I thought you were going to go with Super EDF.
That's another favorite. You know, I was thinking about that in the back of my head, too, along with Phalanx. Those were like my holy trinity of soundtracks for shoot-'em-ups when I was a kid. But Super R-Type just has that amazing kind of funk, New Jack Swing feel. And every time I listen to it, it absolutely blows me away. And I always forget how good it is until I hear it again. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I listen to this more? So that's going to take the cake for me for my favorite shmup soundtrack.
This is an interesting turn of events. I've picked the Genesis game. You picked the Super Nintendo game.
Yeah, it's true.
Although I would say if I was to give a runner-up, I would say UN Squadron.
That is not
surprising at all.
Completely Chocolate Rain.
Yes. All right, who's next?
All right, next question. From Joe Dunbar, who's one of the most ridiculous people on our Facebook group. We love you, Joe. He asks, without asking Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Switch cartridge?
I'm going to say 5.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
You must have a very sandpapery tongue.
I do.
Now, do you get the question?
Well, you didn't say I had to lick it.
No, but do you understand why he asks the question?
No.
Well, that's right. You don't have a Switch, so you probably weren't following the news too much.
Oh, I know that
Nintendo
people were licking them.
Yeah, Nintendo put a coating on the cartridges because they're so small and kids use them, etc., to kind of get around that whole age restriction or whatever to enlarge the cartridges. They put a coating on it which tastes extremely bitter. So if a kid were to ever put it in its mouth, it would probably spit it out before it swallowed it. I think that's what Joe's referencing here, is that you probably couldn't even lick it more than a couple times anyway without being completely grossed out by it.
This is the Tide Pod of video games.
Yes. Oh, man, the Switch Lick Challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm sure it's been done.
Let's start a YouTube trend.
I'm sure it's been done. Ben Dishman writes,
Mr. Dyad,
if you could have dinner with 4 famous people, living or dead, who would they be and why? You can make this video game related only if you want. I'm going to make it video game related only.
Are you?
Yeah.
You're going to put that on there?
I am.
Okay.
And they have to be real people, so I can't say like Tifa and
Right. Video game.
No video game hotties, just video game people.
Oh, man. Okay. For me, obviously the first one would be Tim Fallen.
Okay.
Just because he does so few interviews and stuff, I would really like to pick his brain.
Okay.
You know, I would say Matt Furnace, but I've already kind of like had a quote-unquote dinner with him, so I don't have to worry about that. Cross that off my list.
How did you have a dinner? Oh,
we
you're
had
talking about the episode.
Interview, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
that was long enough that we could have had dinner with him.
The equivalent, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who else? Oh, Trip Hawkins.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he just seems like one of those really like entrepreneurial guys. Like I would love to have been there when they were like developing the 3DO system, because I'm such like a closet 3DO fan. Really love that system.
Yeah.
And I would like to kind of pick his brain about that era and what he regrets, what he feels he could have done better looking back on it. I think that would have been a really interesting and informative conversation for me.
Fair enough.
All right, I did 2. Now you do 2 while I think of my next 2.
Okay. I'm gonna say. See, I've already met Koji Igarashi, but...
You didn't have dinner with him.
I did not. You know who did, though? Our good friend Mike McDaniel.
He did.
You believe that? I'm just so jealous. It's so awesome.
He has done a lot of work for the Bloodstained community.
Absolutely.
So he deserves every meeting he gets with that
Of
man.
course. And let me...
and he was wearing a PixelTunes shirt while he was there.
Wasn't that awesome? So it's kind of like we were there.
Kind of like we had dinner with him.
Yeah, a little bit.
Fabrically.
So, So I'm going to say Michiru Yamane.
Okay.
Just because she's a fantastic composer, and I'd love to pick her brain in English and have somebody translate.
Yes.
The other I would say is Iku Mizutani, of course, because he's my favorite composer. And for my last 2, I'm going to say Gunpei Yokoi, because he is passed away, and I'd love to pick his brain on, information on creating the Game Boy and working on Metroid.
Yeah, no,
like
he's
Metroid
a brilliant man.
Brilliant man. And, the last, honestly, I would say is more of like a childhood thing, is Shigeru Miyamoto.
Yeah, his name kind of crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Then I thought Akira Yamaoka.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love the Silent Hill soundtracks, and he has said in the past he has, he's a fan of a lot of different like industrial music and bands that I really love too. So I think we could definitely trade, barbs back and forth about that. And then Alberto Gonzalez, because he just, every time we cross his path online, he just seems like such a nice guy.
Yeah.
And it would be really nice to just sit down and just chat. And he's got such a rich history from the ZX Spectrum, and he's still making games and soundtracks today. So I feel like he would be a really cool guy to talk to.
That'd be cool
as well.
I think for Shigeru Miyamoto, I would try to see if I can have Reggie Fils-Aimé translate. That way I kind of get a twofer.
Yeah.
Because I get to talk to
Does he
Reggie.
speak Japanese?
Probably not.
Probably basic.
Probably very basic.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's a really good question.
Yeah, actually.
I wish I could expand the list, because there's so many more that I'd love to chat with.
We'd love to hear who you guys would like to sit down with in the video game industry.
Yes.
Give us comments on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/PixelTunesRadio. You know the drill.
Yes. All right, so a little bit of information about Batman. Why don't you start us off, Ed?
Sure. For those of you who have been living under a rock for the past 50 years, Batman's a superhero in the DC Comics universe. His real name is Bruce Wayne, and he's the young millionaire owner of Wayne Enterprises in the fictional Gotham City.
Dude, spoilers. So his parents were murdered by a robber in front of his eyes, and this resulted in trauma combined with his fear of bats after stumbling into an infested cave on the Wayne property. This led him to become the Batman and protect Gotham from supervillains.
Yep.
Batman's first appearance was in 1939 in Detective Comics number 27. And he was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
Yeah, so Kane and Finger were working for National Comics at the time before they were called DC Comics. DC actually stands for Detective Comics. So when you say Detective Comics, you're actually saying Detective Comics. But he worked there from 1934 until 1966, and he created lots of Batman characters like Robin, the Joker, Catwoman, Two-Face, the Penguin, etc., etc., etc. And then Finger...
Yeah, Finger was also responsible for getting the Green Lantern off the ground in addition to Batman. And, most of the more campy aspects of early Batman stories were from his imagination. Like things like the early Batmobile, the Batcave, and that giant Lincoln penny that can be found inside his cave.
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff, a lot of the like Adam West Batman series and that whole camp aspect really came from a lot of what Finger brought to the Batman series. And Kane I think he was more responsible for like a lot of Batman's pathos.
Right.
And his whole backstory. So when you see like the Frank Miller Batman, the really dark aspects of Batman.
It's more on that
It's
scale.
more based on what Kane came up with. But the combination of the two made for a very versatile superhero, because you have a silly Batman and you have a dark Batman, and they're both part of the public conscience. So you can have a character that's completely goofy or like ready to like kill himself if he doesn't get the Joker this time, and people believe both sides of it. So it's really cool to have a hero like that can appeal to almost everybody. They just choose the Batman that's their favorite, Yeah. So do you like the darker Batman, or do you like the more silly Batman?
No, I prefer the darker Batman.
I figured as much.
Yeah. I like the more, like, realistic, I guess, atmosphere. But with that said, I do like the, like, goofy Batman.
Yeah, it has its charm.
Yeah, it does. It depends, though. Like, I really dislike, like, Batman and Robin, the movie. Batman Forever, like, half of it. Like, all when the villains get too zany in the movies, I don't like it.
Right.
But if I'm watching the 60s Batman show, I love it, because they're just... Everything
it's
is
so
over
bad
the
it's
top.
good. It's supposed to be very campy.
Right, exactly.
But then when they try to do campy but also big budget, they just don't mix well together.
Yep.
You're expecting quality performances and not getting it, and it doesn't match with the visuals. So
So we'll kind of talk a little bit about throughout this episode. We'll talk about our experiences with Batman, how we got into Batman probably, and talk about some games. So why don't we kick off with the first game on our list. What you got for us, Ed?
The first game on our list is actually the first Batman game ever made, to my knowledge.
Okay.
This is Batman the Caped Crusader. This came out on the Commodore 64 in 1988. This is the gameplay theme written by Fred Gray. Welcome back. That was Batman, the Caped Crusader on the C64. That was the gameplay theme written by Fred Gray way back in 1988.
So, the beginning of the track, to me, kind of felt like reggae, almost.
Okay.
And this, I tend to notice that a lot of C64 tracks kind of sound like that. It's got that, like, hop-skip vibe to it. Like,
yeah. It was really popular in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah. I mean, what with, like, Bob Marley and stuff, like, was
Exactly.
super popular back then.
Yep.
So, that makes sense. And so, then it kicks into this, like, almost like rock vibe, like almost like a progressive rock, like Tim Fallon-esque, like da 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 da.
Yeah.
It's like building and building, and then it kind of kicks off into that like homage to the original '60s Batman show. The na 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 na. I was digging it. It was a neat track. I like that it changed throughout the entire track, and kept me interested the whole time through, which is good because the game is
The game's not bad. We weren't able to get it working properly when we tried to play it a couple days ago.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of like what Jun Funahashi did with the original Ninja Turtles game on the NES. They incorporated the Batman theme, but then also made it his own. So it was cool seeing that da-na-na-na-na-na and then da-na-na-na, like lots of different flourishes, and then just kept it in the same key and kind of really kept that feel of that song, but made it feel Batman, even though it was, not tunes that we had heard before necessarily. Right. He was able to get a lot done without a lot of percussion. Like you said, those parts where like it really feels like they're just pounding on the piano keys, like Elton John, Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting, that kind of like just really going at it on the keyboard. Very, very powerful song, and I felt like it fit like a superhero motif. Really well.
Similar to like the Master System, I think that the Commodore 64 does a really good job, in the right hands of the right creators and musicians, does a really good job with being able to not have percussion in a song, but still make it like a worthwhile track.
Right, yeah.
So it's really hard to do.
And it's tough. I mean, a lot of the video games, you're going to be using like the noise channel and those percussive sounds as sound effects. So you kind of want to keep those out of the music, because then it just sounds like a big jumble of static with some tones underneath it. So if you leave the sound effects out of it, then you can do some percussion. So that's why a lot of games like make you choose between sound effects and music.
Yeah, like on the Amiga.
There's just not enough channels to do all at once.
Right.
So
yeah, graphically this is really cool though.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at the game, if you want a little bit better of an idea as to what the game looks like, I mean, certainly look it up on YouTube, but I'd recommend also watching Angry Video Game Nerd's video that he did on the Batman series, which is very entertaining and interesting. He covers the Commodore 64 game, and you could see, like, as you're walking around in the game as Batman, like, you go into certain rooms or certain locations, and, like, there's these pop-out panels that kind of pop up in front of the screen
very
that you're on.
book-esque.
Yeah, very comic booky, so it's pretty neat.
Yeah, and you wander around and there's tons of items to collect, and it's not like a linear, even though it's side-scrolling, it's not like a linear game. It's kind of like almost like Maniac Mansion with more action.
Yep.
You can kind of go wherever you want, but you need to find the right items to get further on in the game. It's got a couple different villains in there, like Penguin, Joker, etc. So, and the animation is good. The art is really good for a 1988 game. It kind of stood out as far as C64 games went. So, if I can get the stupid controls working, I do want to try it out, because it looks like a pretty cool play.
Yeah. So tell me about Fred Gray.
Well,
who's this guy?
Fred Gray is a British composer, and he was influenced by the early greats like Rob Hubbard. Of course, most of those guys were. He's most well known for his work on the C64 games Mutants, Shadowfire, and Enigma Force. So most people that grew up with the Commodore 64 would recognize those titles as having really good soundtracks.
Right.
They used lots of new techniques that inspired other SID chip composers that would come after Fred Gray. He originally started as a solo programmer working on some early VIC-20 computer titles. The VIC-20 is kind of like the predecessor for the C64. A development house called Imagine took note of him, and the manager of that company liked the music that he made for the VIC-20 games and said, well, instead of programming games, why don't you come and be our full-time composer? Here's this SID chip, it's got a lot more, because I think the VIC-20 could only do like one tone at a time.
Right.
So he did a good job with even one tone. So like, well, here you have 3 channels, see what you can do with this. And so he kind of took off with that and composed a whole bunch of C64 games for Imagine and beyond.
Cool.
And nowadays he's retired from composing and he teaches computer classes in England.
Cool.
So, but yeah, Fred Gray is a guy we haven't really talked about much. No. So I want to definitely play some of those other games like Mutants, Shadowfire, and Enigma Force on the show, because they've got fantastic soundtracks, and I've just kind of recently learned about him. So
it's always interesting to me to find out that a video game composer has retired and now they're teaching classes and they're like a professor in college or whatever. Naoki Kodaka, I think, is the same thing. I think he quit.
Absolutely.
And he's a professor now, or a teacher. It's pretty cool. It's interesting. It's nice to know that actually, they want to pass on their knowledge.
There will be 3 composers that are teaching as we go through the show. So that's an interesting parallel. Maybe Batman has something to do with that.
Yes. So what do you got next for us?
Next up is another Batman game. Obviously, it's a Batman show. I don't know why I said that. Next up is Batman the Movie for the ZX Spectrum. This came out 1 year later in 1989. This is Stage 5, The Cathedral, composed by Matthew Cannon. Alright, that was Stage 5, The Cathedral, from the game Batman the Movie, released on the ZX Spectrum in 1989, composed by Matthew Cannon. This was Mike's favorite Batman game ever.
Oh no, I did not like this game at all. It's unfortunate because it's like just an inferior version of a game that we'll be talking about in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just very clunky, and it's very slow, and just not good. I mean, you're playing as Batman, obviously. You're running around, you can climb ladders, you can use the bat rope thing, I don't know, battering, whatever you want to call it,
yeah,
to pull yourself up these specific ledges, but then these guys will like throw stuff at you to like hurt you and like just stuff.
Black
it's
blobs.
Just, it's so ugly because it's a ZX Spectrum game, you know, and I'm not
everything
a
is
graphics
blue.
guy,
Like the entire
right.
field of play is blue with black highlights, and the control panel, like, you know, your stats on the bottom are all pretty well colored, which kind of makes me wonder why. Well, then those are static on the screen, so I don't really know how programming the ZX Spectrum works, and whether moving things can only be one color while static things can be several colors or whatever. But it's just an ugly, ugly game with a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
I like this one. As soon as we started it up, I was like, oh my god, this is reggae too. It's really funny.
Yeah.
And Mike just kind of rolled his eye.
Not that I have anything wrong with reggae. It's not my...
The influence are just so prevalent back
Right.
then.
It's not my go-to when it comes to music. It's one of the last things I'll probably listen to.
Yep.
But I tend to like it more when it's in video games.
Agreed, me too.
Yeah.
Sure.
So... that's a thing.
There you go. And this is the last level of the game, Stage 5, the Cathedral. So this is where it is Batman the movie, so this is eventually where you do face off against the Joker at the end of the
Don't worry, you'll never hear this track if you play this game.
Yeah.
Because if you're like me, you won't even be able to get through the first
Which is
level.
why we're playing it here.
Yes.
But that being said, the music does have kind of a very foreboding atmosphere. It's very slow and plodding. You don't even get any percussion until like 2 minutes in, and then it's that really heavy kind of, kick static sound. I like the way that at the beginning, at least with the melody lines, they're so drawn out, and they start really low, and then it takes like almost 8 measures to finally get to where it ends on kind of like a higher note, and then goes back low again. So it just feels very methodical, very slow, very getting where you need to get to, but very slowly, which is kind of like what this game is anyway.
Yeah, there's a track that we're going to be playing a little later on in the podcast that is very similar to this in the sense that it's very grindy, very kind of brooding and dark, and I like that about this track. I like that they tried to put in that kind of style of music. Batman's always had that vibe to him aside from like the more slapsticky stuff.
Yep.
So it's nice that the movie game mirrors the movie game on the game itself.
Right. They follow the plot pretty well. So a little bit about Matthew Cannon before we move into our next game, who Matthew Cannon also had a hand in composing. He's a British composer again, composed early games developed in the UK. He worked as an employee of Ocean Software alongside Jonathan Dunn from 1987 until 1992. While he was at Ocean, he wrote the music for all the ports of Batman the movie, the game, including the ZX Spectrum port, the one for the Amstrad CPC, the Amiga, the Atari ST, and DOS. He also did games like F-29 Retaliator, the Amiga version of RoboCop 2, the ZX Spectrum and the CPC, and did Rainbow Island 2 and Hook for the NES. After he left Ocean, he contributed some music to the Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball game, which Tim Fallon also worked on. That was from Software Creations. He did the music for Tin Star on the SNES. That was also made by Software Creations. And then his last game that we have information on is called Striker 95, which was a soccer game for DOS. And that was developed by Rage Software, and it came out in the eponymous year of 1995. So he's probably teaching somewhere too. Who knows?
Yeah. Probably.
But his name is pretty well known as being... I knew of him without even really hearing a lot of his music.
Yeah, I've heard his name.
Based on this is one of his early works from the ZX Spectrum, you can tell that he has a lot of talent. He probably only got much, much better as time went on as well. So, moving on to our third track.
Yes.
Another British computer system. This is the Amiga version of the same game, Batman the movie. This is the title screen theme. This is a little bit of change of pace.
Yes.
This soundtrack was written by Matthew Cannon and Jonathan Dunn, and based on the tone of the song, I'm thinking Jonathan Dunn probably worked on this one.
Probably, yeah.
So
all right, let's hit it.
Tell all your friends.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
Who are you?
I want you to tell all your friends about Matthew Cannon and Jonathan Dunn.
I'm Savage.
I'm Batman. Savage Batman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was the title screen music from the Amiga version of Batman the movie, which came out in 1989, composed by Matthew Cannon and Jonathan Dunn.
I love me some Jonathan Dunn, but these samples are goofy.
They're goofy, yeah. You know what really grabbed me about this song is right after that pattern where the guitar plays and it's like dun 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 dun,
Yeah.
like that disco,
Almost like
bass.
house.
It's just that one instrument and the drums. I absolutely love that. Like I could listen to that on loop for 15 minutes probably and not get tired of it.
You just love the PCM samples.
It's just good stuff. Yeah.
Who are you? I'm Batman.
But that part really grabbed me. It was the fact that part was so minimal. It was just one instrument and percussion, and
Yeah.
it just sounds so good. So that really kind of made me fall in love with the music. And the samples are just the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
You know.
I love the guitar because it's very clearly, it sounds like somebody just went, like, you know, when you see somebody that's playing the guitar and it's very clear they're not really playing anything. They're just like, they're like making their hand go in like circular motions, like wow, wow,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Like that's the vibe that I got from that, like wow, wow, wow. It's just, I don't know. It's over the top, it's campy, it's goofy. I really feel like it kind of belongs in a game that's like referencing the 60s show.
Yeah.
But
Or this like a 70s version,
Right.
like a Saturday Night Fever version of Batman. You know.
but I do feel like the samples are very clean, very clear.
Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday. Oh boy. Too many bat puns
But
already.
yes, what you were saying, the samples are very clean.
Yeah, they're
It's
very
good
clean.
sounding.
Yeah, you can totally hear everything in it. I don't know, the beginning, like, who are you? I didn't really hear it the first time. Like, it sounded kind of muffled.
Yeah.
But after I kind of listened to it a couple times, I was like, oh, he's saying, who are you?
Yeah. You know, the original way that a lot of the music came out of the Amiga was like hard panned left and right.
Right.
So you would get like, you know, the drums only on one speaker and the samples would be on the other speaker. So it's a little easier to understand them. Nowadays it's kind of understood that, you know, we'll use some stereo blending to make the song sound a little better. Back then people weren't really using headphones to listen to game music, so it sounds really awful in the car or on headphones
Right.
if you've got hard pan left and right instruments.
That's
so.
the thing, is I was listening to this track in the car, and I'm listening and I hear everything on the left-hand side, and I'm like, did my speaker blow out?
Yeah.
Like, what happened on the right? And then when it comes in, I'm like, oh, okay.
Amiga, that's right. Right then.
Right.
Yeah, so most rips you'll hear on YouTube and stuff will have kind of a blended stereo effect like
Yep.
this one does.
But this game is a better version of the game that we just talked
Yes,
about.
much more playable.
Yeah.
So I believe that this version might have actually come first, and that the ZX Spectrum version was a downport.
Like a downport, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
But the levels are pretty much the same layout. They're a little bit different here and there. Sometimes there's an enemy where there wasn't one in the other one, or an obstacle where there wasn't one. We didn't really play past the first level because it's really long.
It's really, the levels are long, but also they're really hard, but they're like, it's not difficulty where it's like, oh, that was my fault, I screwed up. It's more like, oh, I got hit even though I didn't mean to.
Right.
And one thing that I think is dumb when you compare it with the previous game is that if you are standing on a ladder in the previous game, in the ZX Spectrum game, if an enemy is climbing up a ladder and he hits you, he dies, but you don't lose any life.
Yeah.
Even if you're just standing there. But if you're playing the Amiga version, if you're just standing in front of the ladder and the dude walks and hits you, he dies, but then you get hit.
lose life, yeah.
And what's funny is in both versions, you're at the bottom of the screen, there'll be like this face in the middle. It'll be like Batman's face, and as you get hit more and more, you turn into the Joker.
Right.
Like your face, just in that little.
Like it starts with
icon.
your eyes and then grows outward to
Right.
the Joker's face, and once it's full Joker, then you're dead.
But in the Amiga version, Joker just looks terrifying
Yeah.
because the faces don't line up. So like Batman's face is, you know, fairly detailed and fairly normal looking, and then as Joker's face fills in, the image that they used is very stretched out, so it's just
like bloated or something, like kind of weird.
Very strange.
Yeah. So,
but
I don't know.
They're
interesting games. I'd say, if you wanted to check out, obviously either version of this game, definitely go with the Amiga version. It's got its merits. The in-game music is not as good as the ZX Spectrum. Did you even remember the music?
No.
It's very generic sounding Amiga music. The title screen really kind of stood out to me. The rest was, it was decent, but it was not very memorable. So if they blended the soundtrack of the ZX Spectrum version with the gameplay of the Amiga version, you'd probably have the best version of the game possible.
True.
They're not the same soundtrack either, so they're not the same melodies or
totally
anything
different.
like that. So they're totally different.
Right. So Jonathan Dunn, we've talked about him quite a bit on episodes 49, 74, and 75. So if you like what you heard here, go check out those episodes for more details on him. And he's a long-time Ocean employee with a ton of really amazing music to his name. He's really worth checking out.
He's definitely a candidate for getting his own episode at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
I have reached out to him to do an interview, and I haven't really heard anything back. But
I went back and forth, I think, right?
No, I never got a response from him.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately. But that being said, I would love to do an episode and share some more of his music.
Yes.
So.
All right, let me pick a track from now on.
All right, finally.
I mean, come on, guys. Gotta hog all the tracks. This is Batman the video game on the NES. Now we're finally getting to some really amazing stuff.
Hey.
Hey, your tracks were good, but...
nostalgic stuff.
Dat Sunsoft bass.
Fair enough.
NES, 1990 was the year of release. This is stages 1 and 5, and it's by Naoki Kodaka and Nobuyuki Hara. Welcome back. That was Batman on the NES.
Might want to go back on your Sunsoft bass comment from earlier.
Yeah.
This track uses the sample channel for the percussion.
That's right.
Those toms.
Yes. 1990 was the year of release. That was stages 1 and 5 by Naoki Kodaka and Nobuyuki Hara. I gotta say, it's interesting to hear Naoki Kodaka's progression when it comes to Sunsoft and Dat Sunsoft bass. Because I've played, not tracks on this podcast, but I've played games like Wings of Medulla or Wing of Medulla, which is a very plain sounding soundtrack from Naoki Kodaka. Then you kind of hear this track and you see the progression as Sunsoft grew more familiar with the tone and sound of the NES hardware.
And I think that as they develop their driver
definitely.
too as well.
But, I mean, they really always focused on making, like, the best possible sounding music. And I'd say that this is probably the last game right before Dat Sunsoft bass really took on, like, a whole new level of just incredible composition and showmanship in terms of the chip. On this track, the drums are really kind of the star instead of the, as you mentioned.
For sure. I mean, if this were played live, you'd need a drummer in your band that can like run marathons.
Right,
this is a stamina draining song.
It is, definitely. And I mean, this song has been just beaten into anybody who's played like old school NES games. Like, this is just such a outstanding track. It really kicks off the vibe and feel of the game. It gets you energized, it gets you pumped up, and it makes it so that you want to keep playing this game. Even if you're doing terrible and sucking at the game, because it is a brutal game, it's definitely the type of track that will keep you invested in the gameplay.
Yes, for sure. And the graphics, too, in this game. I mean, I was noting as we were playing a couple days ago, just the level of detail in the background is unbelievable.
Yeah, the animation, not just on this level, but like if you go to like level 4, there's these like little grindy things on the floor that you'll see, like these little like turning wheels. Each one of them has their own animation, and then you've got like the Joker, TV in the background flickering and laughing.
Yeah.
Like it's just all very visually stunning to look at, especially back in the day. That was 1990.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of games that looked like this.
No, they had some phenomenal artists, and I think a lot of the graphics in these games definitely inspired future pixel artists to create games. A lot of using black as negative space. Everything was on a black background, and things would fade into black, or you'd see just portions of walls, and you would mentally fill in those places. So a lot of those techniques were kind of developed around that time, especially by companies like Sunsoft and Konami, to kind of overcome the sprite limits and the color limits that the NES had.
Yeah, definitely. Did you grow up with this game, or
no? You know what? I really didn't grow up with any Batman games. One game that we're playing in the future, later on in the show, I do have more kind of a nostalgic bent for, but I was not a DC fan at all.
Okay.
We were very much into Marvel, so we had the X-Men games and all that growing up, but I stayed away from a lot of the Justice League and Batman stuff. So it just didn't appeal.
Yeah.
I think I probably rented this one and played it a bunch and then brought it back, but just never ended up. Because that's what we would do. We would kind of like, me and my brother would rent games, we'd play them, and then the ones we really liked, we would put on our Christmas list.
Oh, okay.
Or our birthday list or whatever, and then we'd get them at the end of the year. We might have asked for this game and just never got it, and then kind of forgot about it or whatever, but it was not one of those games that I remember playing a lot.
Did you see the movie, or is this, in other words...
No, like I said, it wasn't really
not into
part
Batman?
of our culture.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So my parents wouldn't let me see the movie, but they let me get the toys, which I thought was weird. It's kind of strange, because I'm a pretty huge X-Men fan as well, growing up with X-Men and growing up with Batman, so I was never really that big into DC. I was more into just Batman and maybe a little bit of Wonder Woman, but mostly Batman. And the Justice League was okay, but really my love of Batman came from the movie cards, like the trading cards. And I would go to like Bradley's with my mom, and I remember like getting the packs of the cards, and they would have this stick of gum in them.
Yep.
Open that up and start flipping through the cards, and I was looking at these cards and like loving the imagery of the movie, of the Tim Burton movie that they were showcasing, and I wanted to know more about Batman. And I never really read any comics from Batman. In fact, the first comic I ever owned was a Spider-Man comic, believe it or not. But when the cartoon came out, that was when I really kind of invested a ton of interest into Batman and got the toys and all that stuff. So it's weird. I never saw the movies. I think I saw Batman Returns, actually. I don't know why my parents would let me see that one.
Interesting.
Because that one's way more dark than...
Yeah, but you were also a little bit older,
I
so...
was, yeah.
Who knows?
I don't know. No clue. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got into Batman. But I did get this game when it came out. It was definitely one of the games that I really wanted. And I spent so much time with this game. I mean, I can beat this game pretty much like first go around if I want. I'm not like... I can't blaze through it. Like, the last level is, like, really brutal.
Yeah, I think I likened it to kind of like a combination between, like, Mega Man, Bionic Commando, and, like, Ninja Gaiden or something.
Yeah.
It had kind of a Natsume feel, too. Like Shatterhand, Shadow of the Ninja
Very
kind of deal.
Shatterhand, yeah. So, yeah, great game, great soundtrack. I mean, it's one of our favorites here, and, well, at least one of my favorites, definitely. But, when it comes to the composers, Naoki Kodaka, we've talked about him tons on the podcast, but I'd love to do a Sunsoft episode. Not to,
we've talked about that quite a bit.
We have, yeah.
And I feel like the time's coming soon.
Yeah, definitely. So...
if we can find tracks we haven't played from them at this point.
right. So, he's done tons of different stuff. He started off in 86 with Dead Zone, Ripple Island in 88, Platoon in 88, Freedom Force and Blaster Master, Fester's Quest,
the Tengen version of Afterburner 2 on the NES.
Yeah.
Really good soundtrack.
Journey to Silius, Gremlins 2, Super Spy Hunter, I mean, tons and tons of games. Nobuyuki Hara worked on Benki Gaiden in 1989, was the composer on that. Then immediately jumping into this game, Batman, Journey to Silius, he was credited as music staff, Gremlins 2. And then he also worked on Euphoria the Saga, Super Spy Hunter. So he works very closely with Naoki Kodaka for the most part.
Yeah, usually you'll see them as a trio. It'll be Naoki Kodaka, Nobuyuki Hara, and Shinichi Seiya.
Yep.
Nobuyuki Hara and Shinichi Seiya were, I don't want to say subordinates to Kodaka, but they did a lot of more of the music programming and stuff, especially
less composition.
Especially Shinichi Seiya, yeah. But Nobuyuki Hara did work on his own on a couple of soundtracks as well, which we've got actually coming up next.
Yep. Let's jump right into it. So the next game we're going to be playing from is Batman on the TurboGrafx 16. This came out in 1990, and this is Stage 4 by Nobuyuki Hara. Loving that. That was Batman on the TurboGrafx 16, also the PC Engine. Actually, to clarify, it only came out on the PC Engine, unfortunately. 1990 was the year of release. That was Stage 4, and that was by Nobuyuki Hara. I don't know, this really kind of sounds like a Naoki Kodaka track, and I've read in other places that he worked on this game, but for whatever reason, I guess, I think you and I talked about it, and we decided that it was
Everywhere
Nobuyuki.
I've looked, it's only Nobuyuki Hara that's credited for this game.
Interesting.
So maybe some of the other Naoki Kodaka tracks we think are from him are actually from Nobuyuki Hara.
Maybe.
Who knows? I mean, there are some tracks in this game that actually do feature in the original NES game as well, right? So
yeah.
There's some sharing there.
When it ends, it just ends, if I recall. Like, the game ends, it just says game over, and then it goes back to the main screen.
Done.
So there's no credits, unfortunately, for us to rely on. And even then, back in the day, I mean, like, there were barely any credits, you know, in video games. It was very, very scarce to see credits that are accurate. So, oh well. But this game, I really gotta say, I had a lot of fun with the game, and I think a large part of that is due to the music. I think that the music is very catchy in this game. Some of the tracks are from other Batman games that Sunsoft did.
It's almost like the music doesn't fit with the graphics, you know? Because the TurboGrafx 16 PC Engine, the HU 6280 hardware, all of the sound channels were programmable. And so a lot of the other composers, and we've talked about this on our PC Engine TurboGrafx episode, a lot of the other composers would just kind of leave the default sound settings. But Sunsoft, being Sunsoft, wanted to do everything their way.
Sunsoft.
And so this sounds very, very different. They use a lot of samples for like cymbal crashes.
Yes.
All of the synths are extremely textured. It sounds very, very full. You've got that slap bass sound that kind of mimics the sound from the NES game. So it really it brings it all together. I would love to have heard like other NES Sunsoft soundtracks as done like this on the TurboGrafx. I don't think they would have been better. I just think they would have been different and really cool to hear. It matches their sound so well on the TG16.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, their sound has been pretty much unanimously good on both systems. I think in the 16-bit era past, because like TurboGrafx PC Engine, we talked about this a little bit on the episode, it's kind of like an in-betweener when it comes to the music. It's not quite 8-bit, it's not quite 16-bit, but I believe it's still AFM synth, right?
For what?
For the TurboGrafx?
No. It's PSG.
wavetable?
Yeah, it's all programmable wavetables.
Okay, so yeah, it's kind of in between in terms of the sound. Like, it doesn't sound quite FM synthy like the Genesis does, but it doesn't sound like completely wavetable like the NES.
Right, it's the texture that you're...
Yeah.
that's kind of confusing you, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm not a technical guy, but it's very interesting to hear the differences between the tracks that do play on this version of the game that also play on, like, for example, the Batman NES games. So, it's pretty cool. This game is cool. I don't normally like arcadey type games that don't really have a story and don't really have a point to them, but I was really having a lot of fun with this game. It's a top-down...
I think we referred to it as Bat Bomberman last time. We talked about it on the show.
Yeah. It's a top-down Batman game where you're playing as Batman, obviously, and you're running around the map trying to grab... I don't know, I think it's different in each level.
Stuff.
Yeah,
stuff. It's like you're Batman picking up litter or something. There might be bombs. I mean, they look like they're like green cylinders with like gray tops or something.
Some of them are
pipe bombs or something.
And then the other ones are like green boxes.
Yeah,
or something. I don't know.
They don't really give you a good... I'm sure maybe the instruction manual gives you a better clue as to what you're picking up.
Which would all be in Japanese, which is funny that this game only got a release in Japan because it's completely in English. Like, it's totally playable.
Like, they were planning on releasing it in North America, but for whatever reason, we were kind of speculating either because, the TurboGrafx wasn't doing very well over here, or there was a licensing issue or something.
Yeah, I gotta say licensing, probably. I don't think that the TurboGrafx really had its fair shot that early on.
My theory is that Nintendo was holding Sunsoft to an exclusive Batman agreement.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't put a Batman title out on anything else in North America. Just a theory.
It's a possibility.
Either that or it was just a monetary thing and there wasn't enough of a user base to bring it out and pay licensing fees in North America to bring a Batman game out on a console that didn't really have that many units sold.
Right.
So.
Plus, it's a larger market, too, so you got to figure Sunsoft being a smaller developer at that time, this was prior to, like, all the other deals that they were working on. This was, like, their first big licensed game, if I recall. So they probably, all the money that they made off of the NES version, they saw how popular that NES game was. It sold a lot.
Yeah.
And so they probably figured, well, what's the point of working on the TurboGrafx? Sure, it's popular in Japan with the PC engine, but the TurboGrafx is not so popular, so I don't know. I agree that I think it could be that. It could be a combination of all these things. Who knows?
True.
So, yeah, cool game, pretty neat, good music. I dig it.
Yeah, definitely worth playing.
Yes.
It's one of those Japanese games that's easy to pick up and play. You don't have to worry about instructions unless you want to know what the hell you're picking up.
Right. So, I guess we'll move into another Sunsoft track. This is slowly but surely becoming a Sunsoft episode.
We may as well just not do the Sunsoft episode. Just call this Batman Sunsoft.
Batman Sunsoft. This is Batman Return of the Joker on the NES. This is the 1991 release, and this is stages 1 and 6, and it's by Nobuyuki Hara and Naoki Kodaka, and also Shinichi Seiya.
Hit it.
Oh, my balls! They've been wrecked by this track.
Wow.
Yeah. Batman Return of the Joker on the NES.
You gotta turn your subwoofer down.
Yeah, right? 1991 was the year of release. That was stages 1 and 6. And that was by Nobuyuki Hara, Naoki Kodaka, and Shinichi Seiya. Credited as SS in the game's credits.
Super Saiyan.
Super Saiyan. Super Shinichi. So what do you think of this track?
Oh, I love it. This track convinces me that... well, it doesn't convince me, but makes me theorize that these guys just wrote a whole bunch of NES tracks around the time that this game came out, Fester's Quest came out, and they were like, let's just divvy up these tracks.
Yeah.
You know, because it sounds so much like level 1, the outer level in Fester's Quest.
Yeah.
You know,
thrashy.
Yeah.
Very,
Yeah. So, but again, that Sunsoft bass just has such a...
I'm sorry, the what?
That Sunsoft bass
there you go.
Just has such a unique and recognizable tone, and it's one of those, sounds that as soon as you hear it, you're like, oh, Sunsoft game, obviously.
Pretty much. And that's what I love about Sunsoft in the NES days, is that you could hear a track from them and know it's a Sunsoft game. You may not know what game it's from, but you know that's Sunsoft bass. So,
exactly. And most likely it's going to be composed by these guys. Right. There's very few instances where it was not. So.
Yeah, very true. And that actually makes sense, knowing that we talked about this previously. Freedom Force and Blaster Master have a track; they share a track in them, so that makes sense. A lot of sense that they were all made around that same time.
And there's a game, Shanghai 2, I think it was Famicom only, that also uses the Sunsoft bass, but was not written by Naoki Kodaka. It's like one of the few outliers that used that tech without his composition.
Didn't Manami Matsume work on the game? And it was a game that was Sunsoft game, but it was a Famicom track.
That was the Shanghai song.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not important. It's not Batman.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah. That dodgeball adventure game.
That one.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yep.
I think you're right. That was Manami Matsume with Sunsoft bass.
I got a good memory. It's a bat memory. So
you wear your batarang on your head.
I love this track. I love this game. I recently beat it for the first time. It's a toughie. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you.
All these Batman Sunsoft games have some...
They're brutal.
You need chops to beat them, for sure.
Definitely. But
maybe not so much that PC Engine game, but this one...
No. That one we blew through, pretty quick. I mean, we didn't beat it, but I think we got to, stage, 7 or 8?
We more stopped because we needed to move on rather than having... we were losing all our lives, like the rest of the games we were playing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we were having fun with it, but, this game, Return of the Joker, is just... brutal. I mean, it's a really difficult game. It's all about muscle memory and understanding where to go, what to do, how to attack the enemies, how to avoid their attacks. It's pure Mega Man inspired Batman goodness. So it's a great game. I love the graphics. This is one of those games that when I saw it on the NES for the first time, I was blown away. I mean, because when you compare it with the NES first game, the little sprite Batman is so tiny. But Batman Return of the Joker, the sprites were huge. The enemies were big, they were bulky, they were booming, they were badass. It was just awesome.
The focus was different. So the first game, sprites not so detailed, background super detailed. And this one, they scaled the backgrounds down a little bit, but spent more time on the animation and the look of the actual characters in the foreground. Yeah,
they really kind of put an emphasis on that whole black screen thing in this game. I mean, there's some really, really impressive parallax scrolling in the clouds.
It's
in the trees,
purple clouds going a million miles an hour.
The animation of the trees in later levels, it's very visually impressive game here, and I think it kind of matches with the sound in that aspect. So
yeah, you could tell Sunsoft really loved what they were doing.
They did good stuff. So Shinichi Seiya, who we haven't talked about yet, he's done quite a bit of audio work as well as programming too. Audio-wise, again, worked on mostly Batman, Gremlins 2, Journey to Silius, Beirut in 1989. Tough Turf was his first game in 1989. He did sound programming and composing. Blaster Master Boy, which is kind of like a Bomberman game, if I recall.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just Blaster Master, but Bomberman.
Cool.
Weird. Trip World in 92, which was a really cool Game Boy game.
Yep.
With Death's on soft base. And his last game was Axria Retro World in 2012. So, unlike most of the other composers who kind of tapped out in the mid-90s, he actually kept going, and he kind of like took a break from 92 to 99. In 92 he did Super Fantasy Zone, and then in 99 he did Little Princess Marl Okoku no Ningyo. And then from there did Axria in 2012. So quite a big gap between releases. Must have, got a job doing something else, like, maybe a ninja that Batman had to fight.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe he was just a Batman.
Maybe he was just a Batman.
Maybe he was a Bat Ninja.
Bat Ninja. He was a Ninja Baseball Batman.
Perfect.
There you go. Sweet.
That's an obscure game.
Yes, it is. So, yeah, I love this game. I love the soundtrack. I cannot recommend it enough. If you are a Batman fan and you like video games, you'll like that game.
Correct.
Yes. So, moving on, what do you got for us?
Moving on is an interesting title for sure. This is Batman Returns on the Sega CD. The track is Act 2 and driving stages 1 through 5, and the driving act introduction, composed by Spencer Nilsson.
Whee!
Alright, that was Act 2, driving stages 1 through 5, and driving acts intro from Batman Returns, released on the Sega CD in 1992, composed and performed by Spencer Nilsson.
I really enjoyed watching you play this game, I must say. Like, it was more entertaining to me to watch you play this game, and I think the music has a lot to do with that, because as I'm watching you play this game, I'm just grooving out to this, like,
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I should be driving across the San Francisco Bridge in in the Batmobile.
Exactly.
You know?
You're in the Batmobile. It's winter. You're driving through Gotham City. You are shooting down all of these clownish vehicles. It's pretty tough.
Which is weird because
you're fighting the Penguin,
right?
But you got all these clown things going on. I think that was kind of how the movie was too, wasn't it?
Yeah, the movie starts off.
I feel like Tim Burton just really wanted to have the Joker in there, and they were like, "No, you're doing the Penguin."
Yeah,
and so he was like, "Fine, but I'm going to make Joker enemies."
I could have sworn that they used it was like a circus, basically, like a creepy, weird circus.
Like a Christmas time movie that came out around then.
But Penguin wasn't like... Penguin was there, but I don't think Penguin was really calling the shots at that point. Like, you didn't get introduced in the movie to Penguin at that point in time. It was more just like... Hey, here's a bunch of clowns that you have to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
It was almost as if, like, Joker had, like, a clown posse. Right. And he was just like... an insane clown posse. And he was just like, hey, I'm dead, so you guys could just have at it. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it felt like to me.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't feel like this music fits the driving aspect at all, but it's a wonderful track to listen to. The production, all of Spencer Nilsson's stuff was fantastic. I was a big fan of the Sega CD when I was growing up. I was sucked into the Nintendo Power hype of the SNES CD, and when that fizzled, I was like, I gotta have some CD-ROM based games. I got the fever.
Mom, I got the Red Book fever.
Exactly. So that's when my brother and I were like, look, since we're not gonna buy the SNES CD thing, let's pool our money, let's go get a Genesis 2 and a Sega CD Model 2. And that's what we did. And we got a couple Genesis games, but then we got like all of those Sega published Spencer Nilsson soundtracked, Spider-Man versus the Kingpin, Sonic CD, Joe Montana Football, all those games that he composed for, except for Batman Returns.
You know,
which is fine.
It's interesting. I'm wondering, and this is kind of a side note, but I'm wondering why Sega never released a Sega CD Genesis 2 combo package. Like, you know, the whole thing pushed together, like already pre-made or pre-assembled or whatever. Not like a CDX or a JVC-XI or anything like that.
I was just going to say that. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm talking like they released a system with the other system and just combined
like
it
all
and
in
then
one box.
Knock like $50 off the price.
I think they felt because the user base for the Genesis was so big at that point, you're not going to want to buy both. I was probably very rare in the case that I got both like
at the same time,
within weeks of each other.
Right.
I think it was mostly Genesis owners that wanted to go out and buy the Sega CD, and I think between the two of them, the cost would have been like really prohibitive.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know anybody who owned a Sega CD. Honestly,
yeah, I had a friend. I mean, when we talked about this, episode 6, Beyond 16-bit. I had a friend that had a Sega CD. And it was brand new at the time, and I went over and I played it at his house, and we played some of the games, and I was blown away by the music and the speech and the full motion video. And I was like, I gotta have something on CD because it's so much better than cartridge. So
gives a whole new meaning to the word to you got a friend in me.
Yes, I've got a friend in CD.
Heyo.
Sega CD.
Oh man.
So this game, the driving is actually, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's a good little action. Kind of reminded me a lot of Road Blasters, that old Atari arcade game.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like steering, if I recall, right? Like you could steer it, but like there wasn't braking.
As long as you push in the direction of the corners that you're going in, you're going to make those corners. It's not like Rad Racer or Outrun, where if you're going too fast, you're going to run off the level.
Yeah.
You're mainly steering to aim at the enemies that are coming down the track at you.
Yeah, it's like combat mixed with racing, sort of. Because there's a time limit on each level, too.
Yeah.
And that time limit was brutal.
So you have health and time.
Yeah.
And then you also have these bosses that show up every couple of levels, and they have health and different methods of attack, and you have missiles that you can pick up, and your standard, like, bat discs or whatever you shoot out of your Batmobile. So there's a lot to keep track of. It's pretty deep as far as racing games go.
Yeah.
And then once you finally get through like the 10 or 7 or
I think it was 7 levels.
It was a ridiculous amount of driving levels before you actually get into the platforming section, which sucked.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that the platforming was such a letdown, and the race. And this is weird for me to say because I'm such a platform fan, but like. I'll play a platformer any day over a racing game, except for this game.
Yeah.
I'd rather play the racing section.
Yeah,
it was
for sure.
Way better.
This is one of those games where I really liked. There was this cool cinematic of Batman sitting in the Batmobile, like driving. And it was this really cool 3D effect where he's like, he's got his hands on the steering wheel and it's going back and forth like using a scaling rotation kind of deal.
It's bat crotch view.
It's bat crotch view. But it was like through the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And like the camera would zoom in on Batman's face and it would go through the steering wheel. It looked really convincing. And
I really wanted him to look at you and go, "I'm Batman. I'm
Batman.
I really want
Tell all your friends about me."
Yeah, and savage. He just looks at you and says, "Savage."
This is one of those games where I don't think I'd feel guilty in like putting a cheat code in just for like infinite health, just for the platforming levels,
yeah.
just to get through them to see what else they do with like the driving levels,
right? Or you could just do. What was really cool is that you could choose just driving only too.
Oh, that's right.
Which
or
was
just
pretty
platforming
neat.
only.
Yeah. So it's.
But I wonder
like,
if you get like the true ending if you eschew
dumb.
one for the other.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyways, as far as recommendation, as far as playing this one goes, maybe
I would say
watch some YouTube videos of it and see what you think before you going out and buying it.
Ugh.
I'd probably say don't pay more than like between $5 and $10 for it.
No.
You know, you could burn your own copy of it and play it on
Right.
your hardware if you wanted to. Feel free to do that and check it out. And then those came in the cardboard boxes. That's how early it was.
Yep.
So it was really hard to find a good quality if you're a box collector.
Yeah, every time I've seen this game,
easily.
It's always been just a nightmare for box collectors.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna collect this game, just buy it on eBay if you're a hardcore
It's
collector.
like that Willie Beamish Final Fight all had those cardboard boxes that just got wrecked. Mm-hmm. Just like your balls.
Yeah.
Really quick before we go into our next game, Spencer Nilsson, we've definitely talked about him in the past. He was a Sega employee from like 92 to 96. I just mentioned he did a whole bunch of the original Sega-published Sega CD games, including Sonic CD, Joe Montana Football, Spider-Man versus the Kingpin, Echo the Tides of Time, and Echo the Dolphin on the CD. A few Saturn titles after Saturn got released in 95, and he was the executive music producer on Kong the Movie, The Last City of Zinj. He became the president of the Expression College for Digital Arts in California after that. And currently he is the owner and co-founder of Illumina Studios, which is a media design and production company. So he's still in the biz.
Cool.
VG Empire did a fantastic interview with him a while back.
Nice.
All about Sonic CD and his experience with getting the American version of the Sonic CD soundtrack done in like the 2 months that Sega of America gave him to put all together, and hiring and how he found all the musicians
and samples and stuff.
to play in like their live instruments in the studio. So definitely go listen to that if you want a really good history of like the birth of Sega CD and CD audio music. It was a really cool episode.
That's cool.
So I've said my piece on Batman Returns. What's the next one coming up?
Yeah, well, this is a very underrated game that nobody really talks about. This is Batman the Animated Series on the Game Boy. It came out in 1993, and this is Mr. Freeze's level. It's by Yoshiyuki Hagiwara and Yuko Kurahashi.
Let's go.
Welcome back to Mr. Freeze Tunes Radio. I'm your ultra cool host, Mr. Freeze. Tonight, we've hijacked the airwaves to play nothing but the chillest hits from all Mr. Freeze levels in all Batman video games. These tunes are so cold, so crisp, they will send chills down your spine. So, donate your life savings to Gotham radio station, attention, Freeze Tunes Radio, so I can help bring an end to my poor wife Nora's suffering. And if you don't, well, let's just say you'll all be put on ice thanks to a cold fission nuclear bomb that will take all of us back to the Ice Age.
Not so fast, Freeze. Time to put you back in the hot seat at Arkham.
Batman, what an unexpected joke from you. But I think your stand-up career needs to be put on ice.
Freeze! Your game ends... No, wait a second. Ed?
Mike, why are you dressed like that?
What do you mean? I thought I was going to be Batman in this skit.
No, I specifically said I wanted to be Batman. I mean, I do have the dashing good looks and witty charm. You're too much of a goofball for Batman.
Hey now, I can be smoldery.
Yeah, but that's not what you're known for.
Hey.
You gotta play to your natural gifts.
Yeah, but it
Excuse
doesn't
me.
always have to be that way.
Hey.
I mean, I think you'd be a better Joker.
Yeah, and you'd be a better Poison Ivy.
Oh, well...
Stop!
What?
This is my show, so it's time to play ice together.
Ice together, yeah, I get it.
Okay, that just deserves a battering to the face.
Ha! You only cracked my helmet.
Yeah, well, how about this?
No! I'm melting! Wait, what is that smell? Is that hot pickle soup?
With butter.
That's so disgusting! No!
Well, thanks to Batman, the day is safe again.
That's right, all thanks to me.
Okay, how about you be Christian Bale Batman, and I'll be Michael Keaton Batman?
No, why can't I be Keaton?
Because you're way more angry.
You should be the George Clooney Batman.
I don't want to be George Clooney Batman. How about you be Val Kilmer Batman?
I want to be the... Yuck. You can be the...
Welcome back. That was Batman the Animated Series on the Game Boy. 1993 was the year of release. That was Mr. Freeze's level, and that was by Yoshiyuki Hagiwara and Yuko Kurahashi. All I gotta say about this track is da 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 do 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 da 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 da.
This song confuses me and makes me wonder if I want to live.
I love that sawtooth bass. Oh my goodness.
It's very harsh.
It is.
And I was trying to figure out the time signature, and it was like 8-2 or something. It's like 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4. So it's really tough, like 6 4 or something, and then it goes 6-2. I think it was like 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my god, and I've said
Your
it.
head explode.
I've said it in the past. I like 4/4 time signatures for some reason. When things get all progressive and
Right.
I can't follow it for some.
Okay.
I just my musical part of my brain is not built to follow music like that. So I find myself trying to dissect the music instead of actually enjoying it.
Okay.
And so I don't know. This track didn't really do it for me for those reasons.
Okay.
However, based on the game and Batman music in itself,
Yeah.
like that from like the Batman the Animated Series cartoon, it fits very well with.
Yeah, that's what I was
that.
gonna say. This is very Danny Elfman in the sense that it's telling a story.
If Danny Elfman like wrote the music for like the
With
Hobbits
sawtooth
going
bass.
up to Mordor or something.
Yeah. I just love that grindy, like chuggy da 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 da.
Yeah.
And then when it kind of breaks down, it's got these like playful elements where it's like I don't know, like I kind of painted a picture in my mind of what was going on in this track versus what I would see in like an animated Batman episode.
Yeah.
So like
This would be like with like the final scene in the cartoon where
Right.
Batman was finally facing off against whatever villain was in the episode.
Right, well, like, say he's, like, chasing Mr. Freeze, and it's like, Mr. Freeze is gaining ground, like, you know, he's like, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Like the top of a train or something. Yeah. Exactly.
And then it all comes crashing down, and it makes me feel like either Batman, like, goes through like several stories because it's like dun 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 dun. It's really just an interesting track, especially when you compare it with the rest of the soundtrack. We played through a little bit of this game, and you know, the initial level, the first level, is very like Batman the Animated Series, like the stereotypical like Danny Elfman, like, you know, that like main theme that you would hear. Right. And so you get a lot of that throughout this soundtrack, but for whatever reason, this track in particular just made my ears perk up. And I don't know if it was that sawtooth bass in the Game Boy or not, but it sounded like something that would have fit right at home in like a Castlevania game as well.
Yeah, and I think it could be translated very well to like a black metal song or something. I feel like that's another reason why it might have appealed to you too, because that sawtooth bass could easily be like just a chuggy detuned guitar, or you know, a brass or string section. So it kind of is a versatile piece. Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. It's definitely a progressive track that I think that, you know, like you said, if it's not your jam, you're gonna kind of tune it out. But if you can kind of understand the complexities and the playful nature of the track, I think that you'll kind of dig it. So, I don't know.
Dig it.
Yeah, so.
Cool.
Yeah. Now, Yoshiyuki Hagiwara, I believe I've talked about him before. He did Raging Fighter in 1993, Ganbare Goemon Sarawareta Ebisumaru in 1991, did sound on that. Gradius the Interstellar Assault, that's probably where we talked about him previously, playing a track off of that in 1991, and that was Mission Impossible was his first game in 1990, so pretty much like a Konami composer all the way through his career. Ended up leaving Konami and then worked on Tokyo Extreme Racer for programming portions, like the 2D portions of the game, as well as sound programming and engineering on that game, and then just poof, faded away like a little bat ninja.
Boom!
Yeah. And then the other composer on this is labeled as Yuko Kurahashi. Same thing, kind of. Worked on 1988's Bio Miracle Bokute Upa, which was, I believe, that baby game for Konami. It's that baby platformer.
Oh, okay. That sounds familiar.
Yep. So that was Famicom only release in 88, and then moved on to SD Snatcher in 90, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake in 1990 for the MSX, and then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Back from the Sewers on Game Boy, so shifted over to Game Boy. And then last game that they worked on was Batman the Animated Series in 1993. Again, credited as Music Image. I'm not really sure what that means.
They were probably just a music company for hire.
Okay.
Just like Opus or you know, like one of those Tease Music, that kind of stuff. So those guys were just basically, they called themselves Sound Image, and you could hire them on to do music for your game.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we'll move on to a very similar track, but on a different system entirely. This is our first Super NES track. This is Adventures of Batman and Robin on the Super NES. This came out 1 year later in 1994, and this is Joker's Funhouse. This is going to be a mind meld, so I'm going to try to get through these composers as fast as possible. The composers on the cartoon that are credited is Shirley Walker, Harvey Cohane, Lolita Rita-Manis, Michael McQuiston, Stuart Balcom, Richard Bronskill, Carl Johnson, Christopher Carter, Carlos Rodriguez, and Wayne Koster. Now the game's composers on the game compositions is Jun Funahashi, Masanari Iwata, Masahiko Kimura, Kaio Fujitani, Harumi Ueko, Masahiro Ikariko, and Kazuhiko Uehara. Whew, okay. Let's play the track. Welcome back! That was The Adventures of Batman and Robin, and that track was called Joker's Funhouse off of the 1994 Super Nintendo release. The composers on the cartoon, we already talked about it, so just go back. I don't want to delay. But the game composers Jun Funahashi, Masahari Iwata, Masahiko Kimura, Kaio Fujitani, Harumi Ueko, Masahiro Ikariko, and Kazuhiko Uehara.
Lots of familiar Konami names in that list.
Yes, definitely. Tons of Konami stalwarts. So, yeah, this game is fun. Really cool game. It was a game that I never really got a chance to play. I just recently picked it up, a part of a swap meet game deal thing, and I got it for a really good price, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And it is a really fantastic game. I mean,
it captures the spirit of the cartoon so well, both in music and graphics and animation, even dialogue. Like it was like they worked hand in hand with the cartoon directors to really make this the best they could. I also noticed as I was playing through it earlier today that there's so many similarities to Super Castlevania 4 once you get into the later levels.
Yep.
I have a feeling a lot of the guys that worked on the Super Castlevania 4 game moved on to this one.
I think so.
And,
I do, especially with the sound.
Yep.
I mean, those toms.
I don't think the composers worked on it, but the sound, the instrument set was probably very similar.
The instrumentation on this, definitely, especially with the drums, the percussion, the toms are very striking and very booming and big and loud.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that from other Konami games around that time other than Super Castlevania 4. I think there was a bigger push to maybe like push the synths a little harder, like in Contra 3.
Well, they were like harder rockin' songs, more energetic.
Yep.
Because Batman's normally associated with a lot of these classical, very bombastic, very foreboding tunes, like from the animated series and the movies.
Yep.
So, as much as the hard rockin' soundtracks on the Sunsoft titles were amazing, and I'm so glad that we have them, they didn't feel like Batman.
Right, agreed.
So, getting to this point where music was like this, it was great. And then the Genesis counterpart to this was
two totally different games, but both games are
fantastic, but it had a Just for Kids soundtrack,
yes,
which was not Batman at all,
right?
Either.
True.
So this, I feel like, as far as the whole package goes, feels the most like
a Batman,
the Batman
experience.
of that era.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I do really love that Batman game for Genesis, The Adventures of Batman and Robin. I think it's a really cool game that
that's fantastic effects.
Oh yeah, really it was definitely a hardware pusher back in the day. Whereas this, not so much. I mean, there are some very visually impressive things going on with the game.
Yeah, there's some great Mode 7 effects.
Yep.
Some great animation. I just think, I don't know, it feels almost effortless. Like, I think it really did push the hardware to the limits, but they did it so well.
Right.
And so cleanly that you don't even realize what you're looking at.
It feels more like a live action cartoon.
It feels like a 2D Saturn game almost. In the level of depth. And like, so when you're fighting like the Joker at the end of the first level, you know, you're on this roller coaster, and you're each on separate cars, and then it goes around a loop, and the whole background rotates completely effortlessly.
Yep.
And then once you beat that part, you get into this level or this area where the camera shifts, and now the roller coaster cars are coming at the screen.
Right.
And the bottom of the level is it's just Mode 7, and you see the two tracks, and they're swirling back and forth, and the Joker's throwing bombs at you. And it's so cleanly done that you don't even realize it, and it just feels like you're in a 3D world at that point.
I think that Konami was really trying to focus on making bigger, badder bosses. And I think that when a lot of their people left to form Treasure, that when they saw what was capable with stuff like Gunstar Heroes, they kind of answered that with Contra Hard Corps. And it's kind of very similar in that.
Boss parades. Boss parades.
Yeah. So I really do feel like the two were competing with one another. And I kind of feel like this game kind of fell into that trap as well. I think that the bosses in this game were really the stars of the show.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you get to a mini-boss like that very first level that this track plays in, when you're facing off against the Nutcracker guy who's like stabbing... He's like a knight.
He just takes up the entire, literally the entire screen.
The entire screen. He's huge. He's ginormous, and he stabs the ground, and you climb up, and the whole thing just has this like weird like 3D effect. It's really cool. So great game visually, and
Audiovisually.
So, as far as the composers go, we've talked about every single one of them on previous episodes. I don't want to get too deep into it, but we've covered every single one of them. So, listen to any episode.
Just a lot of those Cowboys of Moo Mesa, Turtles in Time, a lot of those Super Nintendo, Konami, at least some combination of a lot of those composers worked on a lot of those games.
Yep, absolutely. So, and then, I mentioned the composers on the cartoon in the previous, just before the end of the last break. This game takes most of its music as inspiration or literally from the tracks from the
arranged
show.
Music.
Right. So you can't go wrong with this game. Great game, great soundtrack. Overall, it's just a lot of fun, and it gives you a great challenge too. So definitely highly recommended.
Yep.
All right. So moving in from one Batman cartoon game to another, what do you got for us?
Yeah, this one is Stage 1 from Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. This came out on the PlayStation 1 and the N64 in the year 2000.
Whoa.
So futuristic.
Ooh.
Composer is Mr. or Mrs. Unknown.
Hey.
And speaking of rocking tracks, this one will probably rock your socks off. Let's take a listen.
Boom.
Alrighty, that was Stage 1 from Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. That was the PlayStation Redbook audio version. There was also a lower quality streaming version on the N64 game, which came out in the year 2000. There are no credits in this game, so I don't know who the composer was. I even kind of hired on VGM Jukebox's resident composer checker Electric Boogaloo to check to see if he could find the composer for this, and no luck there either.
No
so
dice.
I just don't think it exists
Nope.
anywhere. But I love this. It reminds me a lot of that Power Moves Pro Wrestling metal track that I played quite a while back. It's just good rockin', chuggy little era of like late 90s, early 2000s goodness with those little guitar squeals that kind of like go between the speakers and stuff.
I don't know. I like the chug, but the squeal just kind of makes me think of the cartoon, because that, if you've ever seen that cartoon, that is literally almost every single song is this kind of music.
Okay.
So they really did kind of go for that vibe of the soundtrack of the show.
Yeah.
But Batman Beyond is like a pseudo sequel to the original Batman animated series cartoon.
Right.
That even has Kevin Conroy voicing Bruce Wayne, who's now like very, very old and basically needs a new Batman. So he brings this guy, Terry McGinnis, on. I think that's his name, Terry McGinnis. And then he becomes Batman Beyond. And so the whole thing is like that late 90s, early 2000s, like trying to be edgy and extreme.
Yeah, well, there was that whole push for everything was very futuristic,
right,
as you got towards 2000. I think because everybody just considered 2000 to be super futuristic.
Yeah,
I think this took place in the year 2049, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was called Batman 2049 as the Japanese release or something.
Possibly.
Because that's what the series was called over there. So, 50 years in the future or something like that.
Yeah.
The game itself, not very good.
No.
It's a very, very monotonous, stiff, beat 'em up with you just walk up to dudes and do a punch or do a kick.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel very good at all.
It's very generic, and it doesn't have. You know how you play a game and you're like, oh man, like this.
You know how
feels...
you play a game and you have fun.
Yeah.
This isn't one of those games.
Yeah. No, like you play a game and you're like, yeah, like this has like soul. It has feel to it.
Right.
It has meaning.
It wasn't just something that they slapped a label on to put off the shelves or something.
Pretty much.
And you know what? It may very well have been the publishers that were just trying to do the cash grab kind of deal. And I feel like maybe that's why they didn't have any credits for this game, because it was probably rushed off the shelf.
This came out late in the library of the PlayStation and N64.
And they didn't want any of their names attached to it because it would have been a stain on their careers.
Yeah.
So not worth playing. The music is all CD audio, so it's cool to just kind of, I don't know, throw in your stereo if you find a cheap copy at a used bin somewhere and just want to listen to more of the soundtrack.
Most of the soundtrack, though, it's like if you've heard this track, you've heard the whole soundtrack.
Yeah,
so
pretty
it's
much.
like it doesn't really do anything that is going to be that outlandishly different. So
it's great, like cleaning your house music.
Okay, did you clean your house to this?
It's just instrumental. It's all the same kind of tempo. It's just kind of like or like running on a treadmill or something. It's just like there's not a lot of change-ups in the soundtrack, so you can just kind of, like the Quake 2 soundtrack is great for that kind of stuff, because it's all just one tone, but it's all kind of get up and go the whole way through.
Now all I can picture is you cleaning your house, and like every time, you're just like headbanging, you're wearing like, like a leather jacket with studs on it or whatever, and I just picture
the Batman Beyond cowl.
Yeah, just the cowl. And I just picture you like, and then like when a guitar squeal when it goes, wah,
it's the squeegee going across the window,
or like the duster. You just like start knocking stuff over off your mantle, like, wah. Take that,
perfect.
Evil doer,
Batman,
evil duster.
Batman Beyond Dust.
Yes, it needs to be a game.
Yes, Return of the Squeegee.
Yes.
So that's Batman Beyond.
Yeah. Okay then.
Let's move on to our next one.
All right, what do you got?
This one's actually a little bit better than the other one, and with a fantastic soundtrack that suffers from Game Boy Advance-itis.
Right.
This one is from Batman Rise of Sin 2. This is a Game Boy Advance game that came out in 2003. I'm choosing Clayface because it's just, I don't know, all the music is awesome because it's by Barry Leitch, so let's give it a listen.
Cool.
Stop stomping all over that dance floor. That was Clayface from Batman Rise of Sin 2, which came out on the Game Boy Advance in 2003, composed by the great Barry Leitch. Very gritty, very big beat, very like late Prodigy, like the Days My Enemy, Invaders Must Die era stuff. What'd you think, Mike? This probably isn't too much up your alley.
I really dig parts of this, and then other parts I'm like, meh.
Probably the opposite parts of what I like.
Probably. Let's see if we could get this right. I really like the parts that's like dun 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 dun.
Okay, that's what I like too. All right, that's the part that sounds most like the Prodigy to me.
Right. Now I really dig that just because it has like a dark, evil, like synthy vibe to it, but it also has that like plotting, like more metallic kind of sound to it as well. So that was my favorite part. The rest of the synths in the track, they're not bad.
Like
but
those faux horns.
Yeah.
I don't mind them, but
They don't stand out to me.
I think if we were able to hear this track in
Not on the Game Boy Advance.
maybe like for what they were originally composed, because the Game Boy Advance is infamous for completely nerfing the quality of any song you put into it.
It depends. It depends on the driver that you're using.
Right,
you know?
exactly. And this is actually like a clean ripped version. Like this sounds better than what came out of the Game Boy Advance. If you listen to it from the Game Boy Advance, it sounds even muddier than this. So, you know, I'm very curious about this soundtrack though, because it doesn't feel Batman. I know Barry Leitch really likes old school like goth and industrial stuff. It's funny because just a couple of weeks ago he did on Facebook he did a 10 days his like albums that influenced him kind of deal, which a lot of people were doing, and there were so many albums on there that like were also like some of my favorite albums, like 9 Inch Nails, Sisters of Mercy, The Mission, Depeche Mode.
Right.
You know, he's got all those influences, and you don't hear a lot of those influences that much in games like Top Gear and some of the older Amiga stuff he did.
Right.
But then this soundtrack has like those break beats and those really gritty synths, and it's got a lot of very industrial, you know, synthwave kind of elements to it. So I'm wondering if Barry just kind of made these songs and the developer was like, hey, let's just throw them in, or if that was the direction he got.
Possibly.
So, but it's cool. I mean, I really like this soundtrack because you don't get a lot of music like this in a lot of games, especially on the Game Boy Advance. And normally with Game Boy Advance, they sound just kind of like beefed up Super Nintendo tunes.
True.
For the most part. So this stood out as being really unique to me, and I really kind of wanted to share something from it.
I think that if you are going to hear something like this, it is going to be on the Game Boy Advance, though. Like, I feel like right around this time, developers were trying to really push, like, electronic music or music that
2003, yeah.
Yeah, like that.
Electronica was kind of becoming big.
It was
Prodigy,
pretty big.
that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yep.
And that kind of fit in with what Barry Leitch's musical tastes really were. So I think he was kind of maybe jumping at the chance to compose in a style that was familiar to him, you know, and have the opportunity to do so.
I can see that, definitely.
Yeah. The game itself, pretty decent for a Game Boy Advance game. Side-scroller, decent animation, good animation with very low detail on your sprites.
Yes.
The characters were very, very basic looking.
Yeah, and it was a bit like the animation itself was really cool, but the backgrounds are very bland.
Yeah.
The whole thing just felt very bland.
And the more frames of animation you have, the more difficult it is to control your character.
Yeah.
So when you're jumping, is like he's got to duck down, and then his legs have to spring up. Like it looked very realistic, but it's also taking him a long time to do everything.
The animation being so in depth made it that the game itself was less fun to play.
Like Spider-Man Web of Fire on the 32X, it felt very much kind of like overproduced in terms of the animation and stuff. Yeah, which kind of got in the way of your gameplay.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. I mean, I really wanted to love this one, especially since I really dug the GameCube version of this game, like the Big Brother version of this title, which is actually a really cool game with some really good music as well, and I was debating whether or not I should pick from that. And I saw you pick this, and I was like, I'll just let him pick that, you know, so...
Thanks, guy.
But I do think that the GameCube version of this game is much better than the Game Boy Advance version. That's more of like a beat-em-up kind of style, and you could play as, like... I think it's up to 4 players. You can play as like Batman, Batgirl, like Young Robin, and then like Nightwing. Okay. If I recall.
Makes sense.
So yeah, it's like a 4-player like party beat 'em up kind of game, and it's relatively fun. So if you like Final Fight, type stuff, it's definitely a beat 'em up worth checking out.
Cool.
So
yeah, let's check it out.
Yeah. All right.
So, I would talk about Barry Leitch, but we've played him on episodes 9, 26, 36, 49, 58, 75, and 105. I think we should actually put some stats out at some point about who's our most played composer, what's our most played console. I wonder, like, if we could maybe get some people on the Facebook group to kind of guess to see, what our most played composer, console, genre, or whatever, or company. And then kind of actually put those stats out and see who got the closest. That would be kind of fun.
With 100+ episodes, that's a lot of research, but
Well, we have a spreadsheet, so it's going to be easy for us to do it.
Yes.
I'm not expecting like our listeners to go out and do the research.
Right.
I just, based on what they've heard and what our predilections are, I'm curious to see what they think we've played the most of over the years.
Well, I would say that going from one composer that we've played so much to another, this is our final track of the episode. This is Batman the Brave and the Bold. This came out on the DS and the Wii in 2010, but we are going to be playing from the DS version. And we'll tell you a little bit about the differences between the soundtracks when we get back. This is the Catwoman boss level, and this is by Jake Kaufman and also Michael McQuiston, right?
Yeah, he composed for the series probably.
Right.
The cartoon series.
Yeah. So, and also Michael McQuiston, Lolita Ritamanis, and Christopher Carter. You have returned to Batman, the Brave and the Bold. The DS version of that game in 2010 was the year of release. This was the Catwoman boss level, and that was by Jake Kaufman, Michael McQuiston, and Lolita Ritmanis, and Christopher Carter. Now, those last three, we believe, were the composers of the cartoon, and so...
Yeah, they also worked on Batman the Animated Series.
Right. So I think that they took a lot of inspiration from the Batman Brave and the Bold cartoon, which I haven't seen the cartoon. I've heard it's actually really good. It's got a lot of really great voice talent that is in the actual show. But the game, it's interesting. There's a Wii version and a DS version, and both games are great, but both games are totally different.
Before we get into that,
yes,
I have one burning question.
What's that?
How did Jake Kaufman hire Naoki Kodaka's drummer?
Oh my god, it's awesome. It's so good. So good.
Yeah, this is breakneck,
yeah.
Dude. I think this is as fast as the DS could probably process music.
Probably.
I'm pretty sure it's all sequenced audio. So.
This reminds me a lot of his Contra 4 soundtrack.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. I get that same vibe, that just run and gun pace.
And they came out around the same time too, so he's probably, in the same headspace while he was making these
Probably,
these
yeah.
But yeah, those fills are just like right down the drum set.
I just love it, and I love just how it's so zany too, because it has those synths that kind of just go from left to right, like and you also get these awesome jazz moments in this track too. It's a very like fast-paced, like really fast jazz track.
I think that kind of parallels the kind of music that's in the cartoon, because that's the kind of music that's in the Wii version of the game. It's all very jazzy, bluesy, but still kind of fast-paced
it has a
music,
smoky bar lounge kind of vibes.
If they sold cocaine there,
yeah. Well, on the Wii version, definitely. When you listen to the Wii version, all the tracks are very kind of subdued, very relaxed, but at the same time very like jazz oriented.
Yeah.
And they step up and become more energetic, like as the gameplay goes on, but definitely a lot more clean and crisp sounding than this. This is just full on like balls to the wall, like awesome DS rock.
Yeah.
So,
and this is the kind of music that would definitely put you on the edge of your seat while you're playing any boss.
Absolutely.
At all.
We played the Wii version. We weren't sure initially whether or not this song was in the game on the DS version. I had heard the DS version first and was like, oh my goodness, I need to
Well, it's Kaufman, so of course you like it.
Right. And I was like, I need to play this game. So I ended up picking up the Wii version thinking that they were both the same, and they weren't. But I was not unhappy with my selection. But I definitely want to go and get this DS game.
Yeah. No, the Wii version is kind of an undiscovered gem. If you like side-scrolling beat-em-up style games, there's some really good combat. It feels very much like... what am I looking for here? Guardian Heroes on the Saturn.
Yeah.
Without the multi-plane, it's just a 2D, but you have that kind of lots of combos, air attacks.
You can grab guys and
people at once,
throw people into another person, and you collect coins and stuff when you beat up bad guys and whatnot. And there's a little bit of platforming here and there as well, but for the most part, I mean, it's got a really obnoxious tutorial, I will say that. Like, we went through the tutorial initially, and after the tutorial finishes, we start the game, and then there are these, like...
They still keep telling you how to play.
Yeah, there's, like, these bat symbols that kind of come out of nowhere, and they make this annoying, like, whoosh noise, and they're just like, hey, if you want to punch, press B, and it's like, dude, you already told me that in the tutorial.
We get it already.
Right. So it's like the tutorial was kind of pointless. But I kind of feel like if you're looking for a more, like Contra Hard Corps, like run and gun, like super fast-paced, energetic game, go for this DS version because it's much more faster paced. Whereas the Wii version's more like just like a beat 'em up, you know, but not a bad beat 'em up, but definitely it's the two games have different paces, different music. But you know, I love the voice acting in the Wii version, but the DS version doesn't really have as much of that. So yeah, you take with what you could get. Honestly, just pick up both versions; they're both great. So. Jake Kaufman, don't really need to talk about him. Come on. He's one of our favorite composers on this show. We've played him oodles of times, oodles of noodles.
Probably along with Barry Leitch, another composer that probably deserves his own episode of PixelTunes at some point.
Seriously.
So, man, I'm just looking at this like, okay, so Batman episode, we're just, picking random Batman tracks that we like, but this composer list is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got Naoki Kodaka, we've got Spencer Nilsson, we've got Jonathan Dunn, Jun Funahashi, we've got Barry Leitch, we've got Jake Kaufman, all these, like, really awesome all-stars that we are all self-professed fans of. And it was kind of like that Rare episode we did, where we ended up with all these really awesome composers that we didn't realize worked. Not Rare. The Core episode, where we had all these composers just come out of the woodwork that we were big fans of and didn't even realize they made.
Right.
So here we are with Batman, and we're like, who knew Barry Leitch made a Batman soundtrack?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why I like, doing these themes. It kind of forces us to look in places we wouldn't to find tracks that are absolutely cool and amazing, and games that
I'm glad I suggested it, Ed. Thank you very much.
I guess so. I guess I owe you like a potato chip or something.
Yes, you do. You owe me one potato chip, but that's a dangerous path to lead me on, Edward.
Because you can't just have one.
You cannot just have one. Just like you can't just have one Batman game, but you might be able to have one favorite Batman song of this list. We want to hear yours, but let's talk about ours first. Ed, let me know.
This is going to be a tough one, man.
This is.
I'm going to go with Batman Return of the Joker stages 1 through 6.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I really like the Batman Returns, the Sega CD, the Spencer Nilsson track, but the fact that it doesn't fit very well with the game kind of detracts from it for me.
Yeah.
I really like that Barry Leitch track. This is a tough one to pick.
Yeah,
so
this is.
I'm going to go with the steadfast one that I was like banging my head to, and that there's a nostalgia factor there because even though I didn't really play the games very much, even as far back as when I started getting back into VGM, like 5-6 years ago, that was one of the first soundtracks that I knew was totally awesome.
Return of the Joker on NES?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So that's your pick.
That's definitely my pick.
Okay.
What about you?
Ooh, this is tough. I picked a lot, all the classic stuff that like we picked. I picked almost all of that, and going back, I almost want to say that I want to pick a track that's my favorite that isn't something that you would normally pick. So. Oh man, it's gonna come down between the TurboGrafx 16 track and that Batman the Brave and the Bold, that breakneck.
It's really good.
But honestly, like the Batman animated series game too, the Game Boy, that track I loved, but I don't think I loved it enough to be a favorite track of this episode, so I think I'm gonna go with the Jake Kaufman track. Okay. Honestly. I think oh man, it's so tough because that TurboGrafx track, or the PC Engine track, I really loved that slap bass,
Yeah.
that slap soft
And
bass.
that heavy texture.
Yes, and the textured tones of that track, but then I really, really love the breakneck pace of the Jake Kaufman track. So I'm going to say the Jake Kaufman track.
All right.
Yeah.
That works for me.
So tell us what your favorite tracks were of this episode of this podcast. Leave a comment on facebook.com/groups/PixelTunesRadio. You can find the thread for this episode and mention it. You could also leave us a comment on pixeltunesradio.com in the episode, and also on YouTube, youtube.com/dongled, where you can watch every episode of Pixel Tunes Radio in video format in a way. And you can leave a comment there. Where else?
You could just put a letter in my mailbox.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you can also go to, I don't know, Twitter.
Yeah.
At PixelTunes Radio.
At PixelTunes
Yeah,
Radio.
or you can go to our website, pixeltunesradio.com, leave a comment on our WordPress blog.
Yep.
I did also want to mention, that we obviously know there are lots of other Batman games out there with great soundtracks. And so we don't, obviously we had to pick...
We had to pick only 12 tracks.
12 tracks.
Right.
But we know that you guys probably know that we missed some great tracks out there, so we'd love to hear them. You can post those in our Facebook group as well under the show post. I've said in the past that the Jesper Kids soundtrack for Adventures of Batman and Robin on the Genesis is one of my favorites. We'd already played a track from that in the past, which is the only reason I kind of skipped that one. I wanted to showcase some newer or older stuff, as it were, today. But definitely, tell us about your favorite Batman video game memories, other tracks that you enjoy, and, your history with Batman.
Yeah.
Did he rescue you at some point from the Joker?
Possibly.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Always. Twice, once with a hat on, once with a bat on.
Once with a cowl on.
Yes. And we want to just make another quick mention that you can start leaving us comments on the pixeltunesradio@gmail.com for the upcoming video chat, Pixel Chat segment. So we're going to start doing that. So if you want to comment or ask a question about this episode, feel free to send us some email and let us know. Again, video format, audio format, text format, we'll take it all.
Exactly. Also, this has been around for a while, and I always forget to mention it while we're recording a show. In addition to our Facebook group, there's also a general VGM podcast fans Facebook group. So that's...
We're both in it, and we both post fairly regularly.
It's adminned by mainly Alex Messenger, who is a huge philanthropist, I guess, as far as video game podcasts go. So he mods it, and I'm kind of like a sub-mod. Yeah, you can search that on Facebook, VGM Podcast Fans. Join that group. That's just as active. There's a lot of people that are in our Facebook group, and then also additional people who are fans of other podcasts.
Yeah.
And lots of other podcasters are also in that group as well, posting and having a lot of fun. So check that out as well. And yeah, I think that does it for the show. Thank you so much for listening as usual. We'll be back in 1 month.
I'm Batman.
With not Batman. And
That's true.
It's going to be episode 110, so every 10th episode is...
a free pick.
Yes.
We're doing a free pick episode 110. That'll lead us into May, and that is coming at the end of the month.
Exactly. So look for us at the last Wednesday of every month.
Yep.
But in the meantime, we might post some extra goodies, so please stay tuned to our Twitter and Facebook groups so you don't miss any other bonus Pixel Tunes content in between.
You got it, Mr. E.
All right, Mr. J.
Well, my middle name is Jeffrey, so
there you go.
Oh, okay.
MJ.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning into Pixel Tunes. Peace out.
See you next time.
I'm Batman.
I'm not. You should be the George Clooney Batman.
I don't want to be George Clooney Batman. How about you be Val Kilmer Batman?
I want to be the... Yuck. You could be the Penguin.
You could be Adam West.